Survivors escaping the wreckage scatter through cornfields at the edge of the runway. Debbie and her son Ryan are among them.
I grabbed my son and we started running and running. And I had no idea where we are.
Some of the children and babies held on the floor before landing are missing. The violence of the crash tore them from their parents' grasp. One grief-stricken mother confronts flight attendant Jan Brown-Law.
And she just looked up at me and she said, "You told me to put him on the floor, that it would be all right." And I thought, I'm going to live with those words for the rest of my life.
The child, 23-month-old Evan Zhao, tragically died in the burning jet. In the chaos of the crash, Debbie McKelvey and her son Ryan managed to get out of the wreck. But she can't see 6-year-old daughter Devon anywhere.
So then you start really thinking, why didn't I have both of them? And it's just a horrible, horrible sinking feeling.
Jerry Schemmel escaped the cabin unhurt. But now he hears a baby's cries. Despite the choking fumes, he ventures back inside the burning aircraft.
I didn't think if I go back in, the thing will explode or I might not find my way back out. I just reacted. I heard the cries of baby, and the next thing I know, I'm back inside the aircraft.
As the central cabin section burns, it starts to fill with toxic fumes. Smoke like this can kill in minutes. Parents like Debbie McKelvey fear that their missing children could still be somewhere inside the blazing jet. Flight 232 crashes at Sioux City Airport and lies in a smoking ruin at the edge of the runway. Survivors flee the crashed airliner, but a baby's cries draw passenger Jerry Schemmel back inside.
So I finally got right over top of the crying, and I'm feeling around, and there's a baby stuck inside this overhead bin. I just grabbed the baby with one arm and scooped her out of a hole. I got back on my feet, found the opening, just kind of aimed for the sunlight, and shot out the plane the second time.
Jerry's actions probably saved the baby's life. But Debbie McKelvey is desperate. She fears her daughter and friend have not survived the crash. Then, suddenly, she spots a face. It's her 6-year-old daughter, Devon, emerging from the smoke.
It was the absolute best feeling because she was there and she was okay.
While passengers flee the wreckage, Captain Haynes and the flight crew are trapped in the cockpit. The plane's nose has buried itself into the soft earth beside the runway. It's the last place the rescuers reach. They have to use a forklift and cutting equipment to get through the twisted wreckage. It takes 30 minutes to reach the pilots. At 5 p.m., rescuers pull out all 4 pilots, seriously injured, but alive.
I remember the pat on my chest, and his words to me were, "You're okay, buddy, I'm here, I got you, you're gonna be okay." And I felt this tremendous relief.
The flaming wreck of UA-232 burns for over 2 hours. 9 helicopters and 34 ambulances evacuate survivors. Jerry Schemmel's thoughts turn to his buddy, Jay, whom he lost sight of in the crash. Jerry hopes that he might have made it, but as time goes by, he loses all hope.
I had a pretty good hunch 8 hours after the crash, when he didn't show up anywhere, that he wasn't a survivor.
Jay Ramsdell is one of 111 passengers who lose their lives in the crash. 1 flight attendant is also killed. 11 children are among the dead. Remarkably, 184 people survived the Sioux City crash. But for the pilots of Flight 232, any number of deaths is a tragedy. Training pilot Denny Fitch learns how many died when his wife visits him in hospital.
And she started crying because she realized I didn't know the truth. That in fact 112 people had died behind me. And I saw her cry, I had my answer. And I cried every waking moment for the next 3 days. I just couldn't stop crying. It just so tore my heart out to know that people died behind me. I was ready to die for them, and I didn't want them to die.
Al Haynes and the flight crew are determined that something positive should come out of the tragedy.
I would like to say that this crew, and in fact the entire industry, is dedicated to finding the cause of this accident, so maybe we can never have it happen again.
The National Transportation Safety Board, or NTSB, dispatches an investigation team to Sioux City. With 427 DC-10s still in service all around the world, they need to find out what happened to the plane, and quickly. Frank Hildrup leads the team, analyzing the aircraft structure.
There's a lot of apprehension and anxiety, of course, that we always go into these things with, and I was fairly new at the time. I had not been with the agency but for about 9 months.
Hildrup and the NTSB team arrive in Iowa 9 hours after the crash and get straight down to work. The investigators' first priority is to try to recover every piece of the wreckage so that they can reassemble the aircraft. It's a mammoth task.
It was such an immense accident scene that we just knew we had a long investigation ahead of ourselves.
The crash scatters thousands of fragments of debris over a distance of 1 kilometer. Emergency services and the National Guard mobilize hundreds of personnel. They scour every square meter of land around the runway. The tiniest component might tell them what triggered the crash, as investigator Jim Wildey knows only too well.
If you want to understand how the airplane came apart, if you want to understand the interrelationships of various pieces, it is very useful sometimes to put the structure back together.
Investigators interview the 4 pilots to explore the bizarre loss of controls they reported during the flight.
Now we've lost all hydraulic pressure.
Captain Haynes and the crew confirmed that shortly after the dramatic failure of their No. 2 engine, all their hydraulic systems went down. It mystifies investigator Frank Hildrup.
I know personally I wasn't prepared for dealing with an airplane crash where it had lost all of its hydraulics. Extremely unique event, and something that I personally had never encountered before.
Hydraulics operate all the flight controls on the DC-10. The flaps that help control descent. The elevators that pitch the plane up and down. The rudder that steers it. The ailerons that make it bank. Pressurized fluid inside hydraulic lines operates these mechanical controls. There are 3 separate and independent hydraulic systems. Even if one system is breached, it should not cause the loss of hydraulic fluid in the others. To lose fluid from all 3 systems at once is almost impossible. Experts put the odds at 1 billion to 1. Then, an unexpected find. Farmers 90 kilometers from Sioux City report aircraft wreckage scattered on their land. Investigators examine the debris and find that it includes components from the No. 2 hydraulic system in the tail near the failed engine. The team can calculate from the plane's flight path exactly when these parts fell. They discover it happened at 3:16 p.m., the same moment as the loud bang and the engine failure.
What was that?
Everything points to a catastrophic event inside the engine, which then damages the hydraulic systems. They go back to the wrecked plane.